Hi, I'm Chris, and you might know me from organizing a Warsaw TypeScript Meetup. It's not a paid advertisement, so I hope that the guys won't throw me off the stage. But we do have TypeScript Meetup in Warsaw, and if you code in TypeScript, you're all invited. And let me apologize in advance. I'm not a native speaker as our MC here, so you need to try to understand me harder, and hopefully you do. You will succeed. So, do we have any front-end developers here? Any front-end? Yeah, someone who wrote a CSS line in there. That's what I thought, one or two people. So that's great, because today I'm going to talk about Bulletproof process for front-end development. And it's great that that the first speaker talked about tests, because I'm going to talk how tests are not enough to write front-end applications that don't crash on production and just bugless front-end applications, let's say. So let me start with sharing a personal story with you. So some time ago, I was leading a front-end development team consisting mainly from junior devs. And to make matter worse, it was a highly complicated project with blockchain and all of sorts of modern technologies, and I was the only senior developer there. And my biggest problem, my biggest pain point was that I was spending a lot of time doing code reviews. Like, despite the fact that team members were learning, catching up pretty quickly, I was like spending 50% of my time, just reviewing other developers' code, and I was like, God, I wish that there would be an automated way to, do these checks for me. And despite having end-to-end tests, unit tests, and we also use Danger.js for sort of code review automation, I was still like spending lots of time just reading code. And I was like, there has to be a better way. And this is how I got the initial idea for CodeChecks platform, which is an open source framework ecosystem for developing code review automation. So let's focus on development for front-end apps. So let's define some of the pain points that we can have during development. The things that cannot be covered with tests. So first, we have visual changes, and maybe I should say unwanted visual changes, because some changes are 100% fine. So we all use CSS, and we all know that CSS is not that great technology, and often one small change in one place of style sheet can affect in mysterious ways some other views that we weren't even thinking about. And the situation got much better recently with new approaches like CSS modules or CSS in JS, which kind of isolate the styles to isolate the impact to one component. But still, we do have like various components that can be presented in different views in a little bit different way, in many states and so on. And to keep track of all of these states, we can use something called visual regression testing. So this is a well-researched topic. And the idea is basically that we can make screenshots of our application and then compare them after introducing some changes to styles or to HTML, React components or whatever cool kids use these days. So basically, we have two screenshots that we can easily compare, pixel by pixel, for example, or there are some other strategies that have some tolerance. And basically, we can highlight all of the changed pixels in the way that reviewer has very easy job, reviewing them. And so what we would expect from a visual regression tool these days. So first of all, we would want to make screenshots in many different resolutions. So for example, we all do responsive designs these days, right? So we don't only want to make screenshots for desktops, but also for mobile devices and probably a few other resolutions like tablets or smaller mobile devices or bigger, and so on and so on. Furthermore, we want to have different source of the screenshots. So do we have people using Storybook here for React or Angular or Vue? Yeah. So we have this libraries like this tooling that allows us to easily develop components in isolations. And this is Storybook. These are style guides or a few others. And basically, we can develop a given component in a total isolation, create so-called story. And this is a great candidate to just automatically make a screenshot of, and we can also make the screenshots in few other resolutions. So that's fine. If you use already storybooks, this is the very good way to start with visual regressions. And then, but still, like storybooks tend to you tend to create stories for isolated components, and then if you have end-to-end tests, like using Cypress or Puppeteer, you could make screenshots of whole pages where you see, all the components playing together and so on. And the idea is that with end-to-end tests, you're already, logged in, for example, to your application and so on, so you can easily reach the states of the application that would be hard to reach otherwise. Yeah, and that's more or less how you could do visual regressions. And then another pain point is bundle size regression. So we all know that Node developers love small, reusable chunks of JavaScript code that we just push to NPM, and then we're bragging about, thousands of downloads and so on. The problem is that these small reusable components are not necessarily often that small. And that's why we have all of these memes about Node modules being super heavy, and, you can find super weird things in your Node modules. I guarantee you that there's at least few megabytes of JSON fixtures right now sitting on your notebook in your Node modules, because people don't use git npm ignore and just push everything like tests to npm and all of these things. But anyway, we have bundlers like Webpack to prevent us from pushing this unused code to our production bundle, right? So you could say, oh, that's easy, right? But not really. Even with Create React App, out of the box, you get tree shaking, which doesn't really work. So basically, for example, if you use Lodash library, I think that you should use Lodash. The problem with Lodash is that when you import one function, you can end up importing whole library, bringing it into your bundle. And this is really not needed, right? And good bundler could detect this and do so-called tree shaking. So you will just take whatever is needed from this library instead of bringing the whole library with you. But anyway, it would be cool to measure how bundle changes from commit to commit or from pull request to pull request, and detect these problems early on and fix them while they are on separate branch. And then we have all things related to performance, accessibility, and search engine optimizations. Basically, stuff that Google Lighthouse can audit automatically for us. So, have you heard about Google Lighthouse? Who used it? Yeah, like everyone. So, yeah, you're probably familiar with this screen. So Lighthouse is built into Chrome. Right now you can go to developer tools, click audit, and you get after a while you get this report. So Lighthouse can track a few different metrics like performance, accessibility, best practices, and some others. And you're gonna get the actionable feedback. Like, for example, your page doesn't do this and that's why your score is a little bit lower. So we wanted to make an automated way to track these scores and prevent them from going down, because often there's very easy. It's very easy to just make a mistake and make this score drop. And the way to enforce all of these things is within pull requests, in my opinion, at least. So you're probably all familiar with this screen. This is a GitHub interface where you created pull requests and you scroll down. You have a status of this pull request. And usually you use CI. Who uses CI here? Yeah, that's what I thought. Almost everyone. So usually you have a couple of jobs like tests, end-to-end tests, linting, formatting, and so on and so on. And all of these tools are great, but the problem with them is that they give you sort of Boolean output, like either they pass or they fail. And the problem is that they can pass, but still they're like lots of shades of green, let's say. Like, they passed, but your CSS change totally destroyed the main page. But, your end-to-end tests are happy to pass, right? So what CodeChecks provides you is giving you this superpowers during code review process. So this is the same screen on GitHub, but with many different metrics that we very easily added. I'm going to show you how to do this, and we track constantly during development process. So we cannot just push something to production which breaks the main page, because we would spot those problems immediately during pull request before they reach production. So CodeChecks connects with, works on different CI environments. So it can be Travis, it can be Circle CI. In future, we're gonna support many others, and and currently it works with GitHub, but also it can be agnostic to the place where you store your source code. So it can work with GitLab or Bitbucket as well. What really excites me about this project is that what you're gonna end up with is each plugin is just an npm package that is open source. Everyone can contribute to. Everyone can fork and make their own check that does something a little bit else. And at the end of the day, you use declarative config called CodeChecks.yml, and you just put all these code checks together and pass them some options and so on. We're gonna dive into it now. So talk is cheap. I'm gonna show you how this works in real world. So we have I created like a small app based on Create React App, which is font. Okay. Can you see this? Yeah. Hello WarsawJS. That's all. Like if you can't see it, don't bother. It says only hello WarsawJS. And this is my terminal. This is my other terminal window. And let's browse the source code. So can you see it? Probably. I need to also change colors. Color. Is it better? Okay. It's worse for me, but if it's better for you, then okay. So we have very basic app component with it's just a React component rendering some basic things. But what's interesting is this project has already CodeChecks set up. So in this config, in this file CodeChecks.yml, we're gonna describe what we want to track, which kind of metrics. So first, we're gonna do visual regression based on routes of the application. So this is a very simple application, so we don't need to employ Cypress or any fancy end-to-end library, end-to-end testing library. We're just gonna say that here's our build, and these are the routes that we care about. In this case, we're just gonna care about index route. So that's very simple. Then we have a Lighthouse plugin called Lighthouse Keeper, which only takes a build path as an argument, and it's gonna serve your content, and it's gonna run automatically Lighthouse report for you. It's gonna generate a Lighthouse report for you, and then we're gonna track build size. So how what we serve to the end user is changing over time. So in this case, we're saying that we're gonna here are the glob patterns that we care about. So we're reaching inside of build directory, and we're tracking JavaScript files, we're tracking CSS files, and SVG as sort of like separate categories. So we're gonna get like the breakdown of each category. And we can track both gzipped, here is gzip size. So this is what really ends up being, served to the user, and without gzip. And we can also set up some hard limits, like for example, the JavaScript code that you're sending to the users cannot weight more than 1 megabyte, and it will automatically fail the build if it does. And as I mentioned before, these checks are npm packages, and you can see it in dev dependencies. There's a shared CodeChecks organization, and all of these CodeChecks are open source repositories on our GitHub. And so now we have like a good test harness, like development environment, and let's make some changes to the code. For example, this looks kind of ugly. So for example, let's add a WarsawJS logo to this beautiful site to make it even more beautiful. So I have it prepared somewhere here, and let me copy SVG containing the logo. Of course, I stole it from the WarsawJS site, so I hope I'm not gonna get copyright notice from Piotr. And let me render this logo in the main React component. So first, we're gonna import it. Logo SVG, and we're gonna render it here inside of EMG tag, just to keep it simple. So yeah, it looks even better. So now let's add a little bit of styling. So we created class, and let's just make it a fixed height. Okay, it looks much better. And let's commit it into separate branch and see what happens. So we're gonna create a new branch. Can you see it? Yeah, I'm just doing git checkout -b. I created new branch, and I'm gonna copy all, and I'm gonna commit all of these changes with new logo commit message. Okay, and now we can go back to GitHub interface. By the way, this repository is public, so you can even create. Oh shit! You can even create your own pull requests if you want to. Whatever, forks, and oh yeah, it's here. So I'm gonna create a pull request now, and you can see already that CI started building things. And one of the secrets of CodeChecks is that CodeChecks are being executed as part of your CI pipeline. So if you go to Circle, I'm using Circle CI here, but it would work in a very similar way in Travis or whatever is your weapon of choice. We have this additional task, run CodeChecks, which is just executing the client of CodeChecks, which in turn picks up the CodeChecks.yml and executes all the plugins. So I need to talk now because the CI takes like a minute, so it's still not done. Do you have any questions right now? This is a very limited time for questions. Okay, we still have a few seconds. So, any questions? No? Come on, don't be shy. Yes, I can. But we're still waiting for CI. So yeah, I guess it's gonna be. It's almost done, guys. Or not, still restoring cache. Anyway, so I'm gonna talk maybe a little bit about how does it work in the on the backend level. So As I mentioned, like all of the code checks are just npm packages, and they use CodeChecks SDK, Node SDK, which connects to the shared backend components. So, for example, if you want to track, do visual regression, right? You need to have a place to store the images from previous builds, store the images for current builds, and the actual comparison happens on your CI. So this is the twist that happens here. But because of this, you could make the checks themselves open source and totally reusable. So if you know the tool called CodeCoff, do we have any people using CodeCoff here? Yeah, few people. Yeah, so this is like for tracking test coverage. So you could implement CodeCoff as an open source plugin that anyone can contribute to, and I'm really excited about this possibility because CodeCoff is always like closed open source, and even like they're sending you sometimes shitty emails, and you cannot do anything about it. I mean, other than going through UI and turning it off. It would be awesome to make a contribution and make it default to off, right? And things like this. So there are really exciting possibilities in my opinion. And okay, the CI passed, and now we get the report of changes, and we see that there are the code checks that we defined materialize themselves in GitHub interface, directly in GitHub interface, and we can immediately spot that Lighthouse is screaming at us that we decreased by adding the simple change. We decreased 3 metrics, so probably something's wrong. We can see that the bundle size didn't increase that much. So, 2 kilobytes for logo, I think it's fine. Even though the logo could be further optimized and could be decreased even more, and we could spot it in the stats as well. And we have changed 2 files on 2 views, really. So let's go into details and see what's happening. So let's start with the Lighthouse report. So we can see that accessibility metric decreased a lot. Can you see? So we can track all of these metrics here, and we can see that accessibility decreased a lot, and SEO as well. And if we click see details, we're gonna see detailed report generated by Lighthouse for us. Okay, now it's probably a little bit better. So by having this directly in GitHub interface, we can immediately spot the problem here is that we forgot alt attribute on image tag, and later, this is the same problem. And later we can spot new problem, which is the content is exceeding the viewport on some of the resolutions. So Lighthouse warned about it for us, and then let's quickly take a look at size code check result. So here we can see that there's just bundle size increased a little bit, but that's fine in my opinion. And let's go to the visual regression report, which is presented in this way. And here what we see is how the given screen looked before, and how does it look now? And this is done for the same view multiple times because we have multiple resolutions. So we can click on it, and we have even more fancy, tools to realize what we changed. But in this case, the change is obvious. But what we can spot here is that mobile view is totally broken, right? And which was probably expected after putting like a fixed height in CSS. But again, like for reviewer, if you're reviewing, like 200 lines of CSS, this wouldn't be obvious as well. So here, like we can see that simple change would broke our application in at least few ways and decrease the final output. And so let me fix quickly the change that we made and make it a little bit better. So instead of fixed height, we can do something like this. And so now we can see that it's gonna, it's responsive. 5 minutes, right? And we're gonna add alt tag. Probably this description sucks, but anyway, I'm gonna fix lighthouse and visrec. Okay, so we're not gonna wait for CI again because it's gonna take us like 1 or 2 minutes. So I'm gonna just proceed with presentation. It's doing its magic. And so as I mentioned, CodeChecks execute directly on your CI and communicate with shared backend component. CodeChecks is a GitHub application, so to start using it, you need to authorize CodeChecks up to given repositories directly on GitHub interface, and then copy a special secret directly into your CI environment. We have an web app that gives you the secrets. You can go directly here to GitHub interface and install CodeChecks GitHub app on given repositories. I'm not going to show you the whole process, but it works, trust me. And at the end, you're going to get like feedback directly to GitHub, right? So CodeChecks is an open ecosystem. Everyone could create their own CodeCheck and use the shared backend API. And we have actually people doing this already. So I'm focusing on like front-end related CodeChecks. So if you have any idea for other, things that could be tracked during front-end development, let me know. But there are some people that use CodeChecks into totally different spaces. Like, for example, you can use it for, tracking Docker size images while you're doing backend development. But what's interesting is that the guy from the internet created a CodeCheck to track the cost of executing code on blockchain, Ethereum blockchain, because then every single line of code costs you money, real money, or funny internet money called Ethereum. And basically, developers strive to make their code very gas optimized. It's called gas. And with this tool, you can track how much does it cost to execute every single function in the smart contract code. And so I think about CodeChecks as a missing step between continuous integration and continuous deployment, something that allows you to do reviews with confidence and do it quickly. And in turn, finding these bugs before they reach production branch saves you not only a lot of time but also lots of money for your business, because fixing the bug which is just on branch that developer is working on currently is super cheap versus fixing the same bug when it reach production, right? And by bug I mean accessibility problems are also bugs for many people, so that's why I have this very generic definition of bug. And I guess the CI is now done, so we can see that actually we fixed lighthouse problems. We still have 2 visual changes, but because of course we changed the screen, but now we can easily say that they look fine. And with this level of confidence, we can finally merge the PR, knowing that we're not gonna break something, meaning our production, too easily, or stage environment, hopefully. And that's it. I have a few pointers here, so go to codechecks.io if you want to get all these links, and you can follow us on Twitter. You can check out GitHub, because most of the things are already open source and others will be open sourced soon. So the idea is to open source the backend component as well, to create like very open ecosystem for. Okay, that's it. Thank you. Any questions? Do we have...
Yeah, of course. I'm impressed, and of course now I understand everything. Now I know everything. When I came here, I was completely stupid. But I'm going to walk around the room. Does anyone have any questions for Krzysztof? Any questions about this CodeChecks? I'll come to you with the microphone. Anybody? Questions? Here we go.
So yeah, you've mentioned that it's a GitHub app, so it integrates with GitHub via the API access. What about code privacy? Like if you're developing your own code that's super private and you're doing everything on premises, how can you securely deliver the code, and does it keep the code itself secure?
That's an excellent question, because CodeChecks don't store your code. We're not storing your code unless if we would do a code check that does things like CodeCoff, then probably you would need to store the code on our servers. But currently, we don't store the code. We just store the minimal artifacts that describe, the execution. So, for example, for Lighthouse code check, so each code check just uploads to our server different things. So, for example, Lighthouse report, Lighthouse Keeper code check uploads like JSON describing the metrics. So, the performance score was like 50 and accessibility was 80 and so on and so on. And that's it. We don't need anything more to compare the results. And also the HTML report generated by Lighthouse is itself uploaded. But that's it. Like no code is being uploaded to our servers. And this was like a very, very definite design decision, and I didn't want to end up having source code on my servers, right? Obviously, that's.
Any other questions? There you are. Here I come. Biegna.
Okay, so I have a simple question, not really related to the code, but I understand that wasn't your main motivation to make money on it, but the servers aren't going to pay for themselves.
Yeah.
So how do you make money on CodeChecks?
Yeah, this is another great question. So the answer is that even though I want to make open source ecosystem like thrive and build upon it, there are still, various ways of making money. So GitLab embraced this open core model where you open source the backend components, because this is really about backend components, right? Like everything else can be outsourced, open source without any problems, and already is. Like the SDK is open source, and there are already like community contributions to this part. But the backend component will be probably open source, but not like fully. Like there will be some proprietary parts that are not essential to run CodeChecks, but are probably essential to run them at scale. And that's why, and also like, it's just easier to use something that is maintained by another company that you don't need to worry about. You don't need to worry about the servers and so on and so on. And that's basically the hosted version will be paid for private repositories. So also this is important. Like for public repositories on GitHub, it's going to be always for free. So you can already use it without any problems. And if you want to check it out for private repositories, it's currently in private beta with few companies testing it. And yeah, you just need to talk to me or send us an email.
Did everyone understand the answer to that question? How do you make money again? Wait, hold on a second. We have another question right here.
Yeah, so at the end, if I have, in my company, we are having our own GitLab, we won't be able to install it at this moment.
I mean, currently, it doesn't work with GitLab, first of all. So GitLab is on the roadmap, but, GitHub is much more popular, and I want to start making money and then, reach all this like long tail of customers. But basically what you could do is you have two options. Either assuming that support for GitLab is done, which will be at some point. So you can take the, Docker image that we're going to create for you and just run it on your infrastructure, and you should be fine with that. Probably there will be some rough edges around the management of old artifacts. This is probably the part that's not going to be fully open source. But if you want to spend some operational effort on making it running for a long time, that's fine for you. But what you probably should do is just pay some extra bucks for on-premise deployment, where you're going to get all the proprietary parts, and that's going to work totally on your servers. I think it's exactly the same as CodeCoff. It's not like I invented it.
Questions? Anybody else for Krzysztof? No more questions? So you guys really do know everything now. I was just kidding. I don't understand a single thing. Your language, your terminology is difficult to understand. But let's give Krzysztof another big hand, please. Applause.
Thank you.